Is Monday, March the 8th, 2021. The time is now 5 p.m. This is a Zoom meeting work session, so welcome. We have 3 items for discussion tonight. Item 1 is the Lifetime Fitness Race presentation by Tim, I guess you pronounce it, Brosis. And item 2 is the Fox Theater update. And item 3 is the review of the proposed mural ordinance. So let's go ahead and get started with the Lifetime Fitness Race presentation by Tim Brosis. Tim, are you on?
I haven't seen him join yet, Mayor. This is Marty. I don't know if there's another representative from Lifetime. Oh, wait, there he is. Yeah. Tim, you are muted.
There we go.
Hey, Tim, you have the floor. Go ahead and give us your presentation. Thank you for your presentation tonight.
Yeah, thank you for your time. I really appreciate this. I'll try and be probably be brief, because as we kind of continue down the road of event planning, as many of you know, there'll be a lot of details to go over with each and every one of you on the call. So I'll start now. Basically, I am Tim Brosis. I'm employee of Lifetime Athletic Events. We are based here in Colorado, and we're looking at hosting an event in October, at the beginning of October, in Trinidad and Los Animas County. I'm joined today, I don't see her on the call just yet, by a coworker of mine, Michelle Duffy. She is our marketing director for all of Lifetime's off-road events, and really our brainchild of our brand. So hopefully she'll jump on here soon, and I'll introduce her. There's Michelle now. So I'll get going with the presentation, and then afterwards, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, please let me know. And feel free to jump in anytime too. I will not be offended whatsoever if you want to stop me throughout the presentation. So let me share my screen. It's only been a year of video calls, but I still have to figure this out sometimes. Oh, it looks like.
Give me just a second.
Yeah, I was gonna say screen sharing.
Let's see. Every time I have to do this, I have to look around, I think, unfortunately.
Oh, I think you got it. Now, is that working for everyone?
Yes.
All right, you see Fisher speak there?
Yep.
Excellent. So again, this, I don't need to tell you what peak that is. I think everybody on the call knows pretty clearly what that is. It's probably where we would have our event name, which, we have a few irons in the fire. We haven't come up with exactly what we're looking for, but I think by the end of this week, in the next few days, we'll have a good idea of what we're gonna potentially call this. So a little history of Lifetime Athletic Events. Many of you might be familiar with the fitness clubs that are based all around the United States and into Canada. That is our parent company. So that is essentially, they're located and headquartered in Minnesota. Our events division is actually based here in Boulder, Colorado. We do own and produce over 30 events nationwide. It started several decades ago with New York City Triathlon, Chicago Triathlon, along with the Miami Marathon. And we've kind of evolved, I'd say, our event portfolio as our founder and CEO of the company's probably evolved his actual racing. So he kind of got into mountain biking, and then the Leadville Race Series came into our portfolio. And in most recent years, and most notably, we've been getting into gravel. And like I said, the most notable one is Unbound Gravel, which is in Emporia, Kansas, formerly called Dirty Kansas, and that is considered the world's premier gravel grinder. So why Trinidad and Los Animas, and why now for us? Again, a lot of this, everybody on this call knows, there's just absolute beauty down in Los Animas. Being the largest county in Colorado is something to say, since Colorado is such a massive state, and the 1,500 miles of gravel and dirt roads with easy access from downtown Trinidad is just something that, as event directors, as event promoters, is important to us. It's nice to have a unique downtown that's full of culture and character, but yet you can kind of jump out into the county and into the dirt roads pretty quickly. And Trinidad offers that. Trinidad also, positioning itself as a outdoor recreation area is something that kind of drew us there too. Personally, that's what kind of drew me there. I saw the announcement of Fisher's Peak, and my wife and I said, let's go check it out, and then realized that Trinidad Lake is right there, not even 5 miles away from Fisher's Peak, and it's right through I-25. And I think many people, myself included, we drove through it. We had never stopped. And we have a lot of friends that say, that's my stop for Starbucks when I drive home to Texas or something, and finally it got us to come down was Fisher's Peak and check out the area. And for us at Lifetime, really, I don't think anybody would argue this, but COVID-19 has not been friendly for the events world. It's been very difficult. We had a lot of furloughs and layoffs in our company, but we wanted to come out of it with something new and something fresh, and keep our kind of foot on the gas. We want to stay relevant, and our president told us, to find a new venue that can kind of accommodate both the bike and run events. And Trinidad really checked those boxes for us, and Los Animas County checked those boxes for us.
And Tim, if I could also jump in there. Hey everyone, Michelle Duffy here. I work on the marketing side of the house in partnership with Tim. The other thing I want to note is we do take a lot of time and care in trying to make sure that we're finding the right venues, whether that's starting a new event or acquiring an already existing event. It's not a decision that's taken lightly. Our business model isn't the organization that comes in and tries 10 new things and then keeps one of them. When we pull the trigger on something, we're looking for a long-term play. We're really, really passionate about, especially on our dirt events, as I like to call them, our events that take place off pavement. We're really passionate about community connections. I think our relationships with Leadville, and we've been there now since 2011. Those events have existed since 1983, and Emporia, Kansas, and now we're in Bentonville, Arkansas, and Hurricane, Utah, and a couple of other places in Utah. And with all of those events, it's our athletes develop more than an affinity for the event. They're really developing an affinity for the community, which is why we take such care in identifying what those communities are. So I just wanted to note that's a huge draw for us, is what we didn't just see when we were on gravel, but when we were actually in town and working with different, talking to Wally and Marty and Jared. Those are the kind of relationships that we love. So I did just want to note that before Tim goes on.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. And it's true, I've worked at Michelle too. We both actually came from different event companies. So we've both been in the event space for the better part of a decade for other companies too. And those were very much a company that would be in one weekend and then out the door the next. And the community relationship wasn't as nearly as much as what I would say Lifetime athletic events can actually do. So our event weekend itself, you know, like I had mentioned, we're looking for a ride and a run. And the run itself would be more of an off-road run. It's not a trail race. You know, it's not a single track trail race. It's not a road race like you would see like Colfax Marathon in Denver. We do want to be able to use mixed surface, so pavement, bike paths, gravel, and single track. And we're looking to do distances anywhere from 5K to 50K for 2021. As Trinidad and Los Animas and the state parks kind of evolve, we're also looking to evolve with them. You know, a lot of our events will change courses year over year. Not a lot. We'll always want to use that same start and finish, that same historic downtown. But it's nice that, you know, every couple years you can change the course a little bit to keep things fresh. We do that at our Unbound event in Emporia, Kansas, and it'd be something that I think is really nice to do year over year. Now, there's certain events we have where we would certainly not change the course. Leadville for one of those, you know, the Leadville mountain bike and the Leadville 100 run that have been going on for decades. There's just too much history with those that, you know, we wouldn't try to change it. But I think, you know, our long-term goal would be to evolve as the community trail system evolves too. All right, and then on to gravel race itself. You know, Colorado's, I would say Colorado's ripe for a good signature event. And gravel, if you're not familiar with it, it's kind of a mix between road riding and mountain biking. It's the bikes will kind of look like a beefed up road bike, and they're for specifically gravel roads. So not necessarily single track trails that you see people ripping down mountain bike trails on. It's just a little bit wider tires and beefier frames, and that's what we're hoping to bring to Trinidad. So we've kind of come up with 3 courses. The mileage, they're pretty big miles. So 160, 90, and 38 miles are the course distances. So again, pretty huge day if you're attempting the 160-mile race. And it's something that's kind of unique to gravel racing. It is those long distances. And that's something we wanted to incorporate here too. And again, I don't need to tell anyone on this call that the topography, geography, and the ecosystems in Trinidad are just so unique, even to Colorado's Front Range, that a lot of these classic gravel grinders that were born and evolved out of the Midwest, they don't see anything like you get in the Spanish Peaks wildlife area. You don't get the tall mesas in Kansas that you see in the snow-capped peaks that you see here in Los Animas. So for us, this is really, again, like I said, it kind of checks the boxes on the courses too. The amount of wildlife that's out there is just unreal. It's like every other turn there's a herd of antelope or elk. And Michelle and I were driving in the Spanish Peaks area and a mountain lion ran right in front of us. So it's pretty cool to see that kind of ecosystem from the rolling plains of the Front Range of Colorado all the way up into the tall pine trees forest. And at the end of
the tourism group here, and if people are doing 160 miles on the bike or running a 50K, to steal a leaf out of Ken Klober from Leadville's book, they're going to stay overnight, right? So you don't come into town and run 30-something miles or 160 plus miles without booking a hotel room or a short-term rental. So I want to note that's when we talk about community, we're not talking about just like community connections and impacting it for a day. It's typically a 3-day long trip for these people.
And it can be 3 days, a couple times a year sometimes. At Leadville specifically, we see it just from the elevation. People want to train at altitude. I would say the same for Los Animas. I think it's high enough that I think somebody coming out from the east, back east, they'll fly out to train at elevation and on the course too. So here's the courses that we've driven that we really like. The purple and yellow down on the bottom of the screen, that's Trinidad Lake here and the city of Trinidad here. These would be the running courses. So the 50K is in yellow, the half marathon's in purple. You can see we use the South Shore Trail of Trinidad Lake State Park. We do have a call with Crystal, the manager of the state park, on Thursday to go over this a little bit with her. And then the big days, the obviously long courses, here in blue, light blue, and red are the bikes. So you can see the big 160-mile loop going up to the northwest, and then the 90-mile down along the southeast, along the mesas, and our short kind of introductory course here in blue. All of them start finish from downtown. Exact location to be determined. That's something we'll have to sit down with Marty and Jared and really figure out exactly what it will look like inside the town limits. But we feel pretty confident about these courses. I can tell you right now, when our two friends were out riding their bikes up in the northwest through the hills, they were like ear to ear smiles, covered in dirt and mud, and they just couldn't stop raving about it. So we love that area. We're potentially thinking of maybe being able to do the 90-miler up there too, just to incorporate some of that forested area that you just don't get in most gravel grinders. Again, these are tentative, and throughout the permit process, we'll have to talk about, because there are police locations, volunteer locations, impact of some of the town and community members that, we do want to be cognizant of. It's something that I think it's a fine balance that we play in Leadville too, is you want to be as much economically impactful on a town without being too impactful on the day-to-day residents' lives. So, we do want to be aware of that, and we are aware of that, and we want to work with everybody on this call and how to do that. There are certain areas that we'll have to work with, Colorado State Patrol, Highway 350, 160, for instance, right here is one, and then obviously with some of the downtown police lead outs too. And community involvement. We really want to be a spoke in the wheel, so to say, as far as Trinidad and Los Animas evolution into the outdoor recreation town. We do want to help bring a signature event to the community. When Marty asked us about, in October and putting on an event in October in conjunction with the Santa Fe Trail commemoration, we felt really honored. I think that's a great way to be able to bring an event to town, and it really creates that event weekend, and that's really what we like to see, and why we want to do a run and a bike, because it does create more of a community feel year over year. And we see it in Leadville with our Silver Rush 50 race. We have the run on Saturday and bike on Sunday, and you just see a lot of people coming in from town to just ride bikes down, whether they have friends or family that are racing or not. They come down to just listen to music, go to the beer garden and get some food. So we do want to be a part of that commemoration. I think it's going to be important to us. And then we want to assist in any way that we can when it comes to bike safety and tourism, and promoting a healthy, the healthy benefits of cycling and running. I think that's something that, Marty felt passionate about, and it's an area that we can definitely help in. Michelle, more than me, but I think that's something that moving forward is important to us also.
And not necessarily related to tourism, so to speak, but typically when we start putting events on in a community, especially a small community, as the event starts to happen, then residents feel inspired to want to participate because they feel an affinity for the event, which then helps to build a culture around the sport within that given community. I'll use Emporia as an example again, just because it's kind of that pinnacle gravel event, but at the start they had 40 people in their first event. This is 15 years ago, and that sport has evolved greatly, but now that city is called the Gravel City of America, because so many members of the community just loved the event. They wanted to get involved, they bought a bike, it became a part of their day-to-day. So that's kind of like an indirect dividend that events like these do pay off communities.
And that's kind of all I had for now. Michelle, do you want to speak at all to maybe marketing and impressions or social media and such?
Yeah, I can keep it super top level, and then if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to field away. But in terms of just marketing and our our reach here. We, as an event organization, like our target audience would be over 100,000 individuals nationally, from just through social media alone. We have our email list, which is another 50,000 individuals, and then Lifetime, the clubs have a couple of 100,000 people as well. So our reach from a marketing perspective is pretty big. Our plan would be to launch this through all of our channels that we already have trail running or cycling events. So that would be, you know, beyond the Front Range. We're talking national, and hopefully once we're out of COVID, we can look at tapping into our international audience as well. These events do attract international audiences, so that would be the long-term goal. But I'm happy to answer any other questions about the launch. One thing from like a marketing perspective that I do want to touch on is, and Tim started to highlight this, is when we are thinking about telling the story of this event, we don't want to position it, because it's not about this as like Lifetime's putting on another event, but rather like celebrate the growth that Trinidad has had in the outdoor recreation community. And as that trail system evolves, and as Trinidad grows its trail system, hopefully we can start to utilize more of that. And I think the message really is like, we're excited to grow with you. And I also want to just say that our events do have like national appeal. We have opportunity to message year round about the different reasons to come to town. So we never want to just position it as like, this is just an event. Our athletes are engaged with us year round. So we typically are communicating like, here are all of the other things you can do when you come to said community, whether that's event weekend or not event weekend. It's still things that we're talking about on those channels year round.
Let's go ahead and get some questions from council, if they have any. We'll start off with Ms. Grego. Do you have any questions for either Tom or Tim or Michelle?
I do. Thank you. That's very exciting. I've heard about the Leadville run, and I think all those people are absolutely out of their minds, but that's just my opinion, you know. I know a couple of people. They definitely are. I know a couple of people from Trinidad that do that, and it's crazy. So first thing I want to know is what do you want from the city of Trinidad? What do you need from us to put this event on?
Support is always helpful. No, there's probably a lot, and honestly, as we kind of go down the list, you know, that's something that will almost come up. Something new might come up every week, right? Usually, a lot of these gravel events, and maybe it's something I didn't touch on too, is the gravel events are very different from a lot of other races. It's not the Leadville 100 mountain bike or an Ironman triathlon where roads are completely shut down. So the gravel community and the cyclist itself, it's open to vehicles and their rules of the road. So in the race itself, athletes will still have to stop at stop signs and at red lights. So that's pretty normal. For us though, you know, as far as the support goes, a lot of the towns would support with EMS or medical, with PD, you know, for like a lead out vehicle to be able to just roll the athletes until they get out kind of to the outskirts of town. And a lot of times, like for Leadville, for instance, it's just the officers on duty. They just kind of lead us out, and then they go to like a main intersection that's maybe a couple miles from downtown or just to their jurisdiction, and then they'll just, you know, pull over and let the riders roll through. So that would be, you know, that would be a big one. Any kind of city services support that you guys can offer would be huge. I can tell you right now, we'll definitely be submitting an application for the tourism board for the marketing outside of Trinidad, 50 miles outside of Trinidad. And maybe Michelle, if you want to talk on that a little bit, on how, like, or I guess you kind of did on the reach that we have. But right now, I mean, those would be the biggest items. Marty and Jared and Wally have been tremendous working with so far. And, as we kind of go down the road, we'll probably have more needs. But right now, any kind of support that the city can give us through services is huge.
I heard you mention that you have 10 new events every year, and this is like a test run for Trinidad, is that right? So if we pass the test this year, we continue on, or?
No, sorry. I was actually saying that many event organizations will test throughout a year, and they'll put on multiple events in the hopes that something will stick, like an Ironman or a rock and roll marathon.
Okay.
They do so many, and then they walk away from the ones that don't work.
Okay.
Our model is a little bit different. We don't pull the trigger on an event unless we feel really confident that
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we want the community to feel confident in us. I think that's the big difference. Yeah, no, that's where I think we are very different than a lot of the other major event companies in the industry.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I have one concern. When you say 2,000 participants, that means there's probably double that of people that are coming to Trinidad. Have you thought through on the accommodations? Do we have enough motel, hotel, campsites, Airbnbs? Have you gone through that to figure out if that's adequate?
We have, yeah. Again, that's part of us doing our due diligence and trying to be a good business in the town and being good to our athlete. For instance, Leadville, I think Trinidad, Los Animas has about triple the hotel rooms and more of the Airbnbs than Leadville has in short-term rentals. And in reality, Leadville's probably, and Michelle, you might correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, we get about 8,000 to 10,000 people in the community between athletes and spectators. And I wouldn't say we don't have a ton of trouble housing people. There's definitely a lack of housing in Leadville. And you do have people that are willing to travel, for an event like this, driving from Puebla wouldn't be a big deal. Coming from Raton wouldn't be a big deal. So yeah, as far as accommodations go, that's just part of, what checked the box for us in Trinidad. There's just plenty of that, and having the main artery of I-25 and ease of access through I-25 really was something that for us, we don't see in really any other community, to have a major thoroughway to be able to bring people in and then to have the hotels along it. That's something that, yeah, we don't really see at our other events. So it wouldn't be an issue for us.
Oh, good.
One other note there is that with the bike and the run being on 2 different days, there will be some rooms freeing up when other ones will be occupied. And another thing that we've done at other events is create, and I don't know if, we don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole, but an event like Unbound in Emporia, the fairgrounds, for example, are not typically a campsite, but for that weekend, they profit off of the event because people do camp at the fairgrounds. So we can get creative if we came down to that, but people are pretty willing to just pitch a tent or...
Yeah, and we do that in Leadville too. For our Silver Rush 50 weekend, which is very similar, it's a bike and run weekend. The local Colorado Mountain College branch actually opens up their soccer field, and anybody, no trailers are allowed, but if you want to tent camp or sleep in the Sprinter vans, which are, obviously become super popular lately, a lot of people will do that, and we'll sell out those campsites pretty quickly too. So, yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you. I'm excited. I think that's wonderful. It's not my idea of fun. Riding a bike for 160 miles and sleeping on the ground is not, but I am willing, I'm even going to volunteer. I think this is great.
Karen, I'm going to hold you to that. I'm going to sign you up.
I'll send you my cell phone number. I'll have the nitro pills and the crash cart with me.
Love it.
No, I'm just kidding. I think it's wonderful, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Mr. Goodall, do you have any questions?
So I can't believe that the old biker chick says, I just can't imagine riding 160 miles on a bike. Come on.
That had a motor on it, Rusty. I didn't.
Miles in that together. This just falls right in line with exactly in the direction I think Trinidad is going with the tourism. I'm very excited, and anything I can do to help. I've been part of a lot of organizations and put on stuff like the Trinidadio Blues Fest and whatnot. So anything I can do to help out, I will be more than happy to assist in this. What a great opportunity for our community. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Ms. Ogletree?
All right, again, unmuting. And I just asked Audra if she could take us out of screen sharing so we can see everyone again.
I thought I was doing something wrong.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to hear about this. I went to a presentation last fall with the mayor and Wally about the potential for this kind of an event, and I'm thrilled to see it coming together as quickly as it is. I just had a question, that some things that ran across my mind. Is there any other? I missed what you said about the Santa Fe Trail celebration. Is this coordinated with that, or is it adjacent to it, or what's its relationship with that?
Coordinated alongside. So, a lot of our events will be kicking off early morning. Now, that being said, the 160-mile ride, they'll be finishing later into the day. But I think it's, we'll work around. That's where we really have to just sit down with Marty and exactly figure out what are the timelines going to look like? How can we actually help support each other and also stay at each other's hair? So a little bit of that, it's going to take some sitting down and really working together, but it will be in conjunction with it. So October 2nd and 3rd, this Saturday and Sunday is what we're planning on. And I know that Marty has a laundry list of items planned that, and Michelle can speak to this better, but it's just a way that we can help promote that too on our social channels.
That sounds like a really fun time. I'm sorry, Michelle, did you want to?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to add that long term, we would still plan to fall on or around the same date year over year. So kicking off in line with the Santa Fe commemoration. But that is so dreamy from my perspective, just what a great experience people would have in year one to also get to experience the different decades of culture from the area. So it's an amazing opportunity for us too for year one, because we'll get to position that as a piece of the event.
Okay, it sounds great. Is there any obstacle that you're aware of that you could use help with, dealing with, or do you feel like you have things well in hand?
I don't know if there's any obstacles right now. There's nothing major that stands out. I think, like Michelle said, we've done a lot of research, a lot of site visits on checking it out and making sure that, we can put together an event. I think as we kind of go through the permit application process, and we work through with Sheriff's Department and EMS and the local medical group, there might be some, especially if Santa Fe Trails, we'll both be kind of leaning on the same resources in the town and in the county. So as we get down that path, I think there'll be some, but like any event, there always is. And as I always say, event planning kind of has to be made in clay, not in stone. So you have to be able to mold it and make it fit, for a road or a bridge could wash out that we plan to put a course on, and, you have to kind of pivot and make it work. And so right now, nothing major, but I fully anticipate something, or else I probably didn't do something right. None
of these are obstacles, but a few ideas on how you all could help. And one is that in the next few weeks, I'd like to come down and shoot some video, both on course, but also of the community. And we would love to put together a video asset so that when we're ready to launch, it's featuring local businesses, yourselves, if you're open to it, just talking about almost positioning it as inviting people to come to Trinidad. So putting a face to name with the community from the get-go, so that we're not just sharing, some photos that we're taking on course, but instead it's starting to build that image of the community, that would be really, really helpful, as well as I am creating these swag bags, so to speak, that we want to be able to send out to a lot of people within our cycling and trail running community, inviting them when we launch to take part. And I basically want to build a diorama, is how I'm talking about it. Like, I want to put Trinidad in a box and be able to send that out so that people understand this is the community that you're coming to. So if you have any ideas from like these smaller items, but just like local artists or foods or flavors that you think like really help to tell that story, I would love a little insight there. Maybe we can tackle that when I'm in town, or if you want to send them over to me in email. But that's like the big piece on my mind right now, is how do I pull this box together? So that would be really helpful.
Mr. Williamson? Not sure if he's on tonight.
Yeah, he is.
All right, Phil, I'm here. Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I'm a avid mountain biker. I think this is going to be fantastic. Anything that I can do to help, I would be glad to do. I have I don't know what that I would call a concern. I am wondering, a lot of the westerly course looks like it's at pretty significant altitude, or potentially at altitude. Are you concerned with the date at all, or snow closures, anything like that? I mean,
I think there's I think there's always that concern. It's Colorado, right? Like, we can get snow in May. So it's something that it's fall's generally a good time for events, especially on the front range of Colorado. But yeah, it does top out at just about 9,000 feet, or just under. I think it's like 8,600 is the highest point. So yeah, the concern, something that we always have to plan around. Like I said before, it could be 2 weeks before and we get a major snowstorm of 2 feet, and we'll just have to figure out a different course, and it just wouldn't incorporate that area. When we were driving it, granted it was February, it was covered in snow, and our guys that were riding their bikes on it were absolutely filthy and wet when they finished. I would anticipate October, you can have the late season rain or a snowstorm, but yeah, I think we would just have to pivot and figure out a course around it and scramble a little bit. But there are a lot of options up there that I think we'd be able to find something that everybody on that course would still Instagram about.
Okay, I'm really excited. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Mr. DeBono, you have any questions?
Yes. One of the questions was answered concerning accommodations, but this is a great opportunity and exposure for the city of Trinidad and the surrounding area. Just out of curiosity, with 2,000 racers, how many vehicles, people / do you have following or monitoring the runners during the course of the race in case of any mishaps?
So that's a great question. And Michelle's heard me say this a million times. Part of managing the event, or the hardest part sometimes managing the event, isn't the actual athletes on the course, but it's the beehive of people around the course. It's those vehicles that try to get out there. Gravel cyclists, though, what's a lot different with trail runners and gravel cyclists is maybe they're a little tougher and a little more self-reliant, that they will plan and prepare food and clothing to be out there by themselves all day. Now, that being said, in a big event, there will always be a crew area that are dedicated crew zones. And we've kind of come up with two for our long distance race that we would try and utilize. But for the trail run itself, you wouldn't get a whole lot of spectators for the run. You might get some people in town, you'll get a lot at the start and the finish line. And you might get some people that might jump on bikes and kind of follow along. But spectating at trail running events, outside of kind of the ultra distance events, is not really something that the athlete is anticipating. And we would provide, as an organization, like aid stations and crew stations. So we would provide filtered water and food and nutrition for the athlete. As far as like staff course vehicles go, it'd be anywhere from like 8 to 10 at the most for like the bike. And then honestly, for the run, we'd probably use a lot of like e-bikes outside of, the vehicles that would, the box trucks or the trailers that we would set up for the aid stations.
Good.
Commonplace in long gravel events is that we'll have some like what we call like rescue jeeps, so to speak, where they'll just be out there with some bike racks on the back, and they'll peruse the course and make sure someone gets 2 flats and they're out of extra tires and then their day's over. We'll be there to pick them up, but really it's not bad. But Tim, do you want to just touch on the 2 locations we're tentatively thinking about?
Yeah, and I was gonna go there. Yeah, so the first one that we'd like to use, and it was really a starting off point for us when we had our athletes on bikes, when we were just, Michelle and I were driving behind them and being lazy, was the Ludlow site. So I don't know if there's anyone on the call that represents the miners union. That I believe it's the miners union that maintains that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, is that something that east parking lot, is that something that we'd be able to use?
I think we can contact the miners group here in Trinidad, and I think that would probably be the best place to start. Marty could get you hooked up with that, I'm sure.
Okay.
That's Mike Romero and Bob Otero. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just taking note. And then the other site was in Gunnar. We've stopped as a lunch spot every time we've driven it, was the Spanish Peaks Inn, and that big gravel area out front there. And we've had great lunches there, and we were like, man, this would be awesome if we just had the riders come through and their family and friends be able to get a bite to eat and a cold beer while they're watching their friends and family suffer. I don't know if there's anybody that has a connection with them, the owners of that, but when we go back down, when Michelle and I are there in 2 weeks, we were planning on reaching out to them about their parking lot also.
And the great thing is that you can, if we are sending people through gravel, if you're familiar with like that turn, they would be coming up the gravel road and rounding the bend, and our crews would come from the highway through Aguilar. So there would never be a cross of cars and bikes on the road at the same time. So they would take pavement and the cyclists would take gravel.
I know how to get a hold of the owner,
Okay. That would be great.
so let me know.
Okay. Thank you, Karen.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's a good point that Michelle had said, was we always do try to keep as little crew vehicles off of the actual race course as possible. I think every one of our athletes would, feel happy about not being dusted out by a bunch of vehicles just going up the road. So it did set itself up perfectly to avoid any kind of vehicle and racers on the course at once.
Mr. Shu, do you have any questions? Frank, you're muted. No, you gotta unmute yourself. Nope.
Mayor, if I might, while he's figuring that out, Michelle, you mentioned about shooting some video and stuff. I believe we've had one made that shows the whole area, the golf course, and all the way around. So I don't know if Marty has that, or if Mr. Murphy, who films our meetings, may have one of those videos that may be useful. Marty can probably point you in that direction.
I will
Thank you.
definitely do that.
Frank, you were unmuted there for a second. You wanna go ahead and unmute again?
How's it now?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, everybody's kind of asked pretty much everything that I was going to ask, but I noticed, like, on your application here for the permit, you have live music vendors and food and stuff. Do you guys have a group of vendors and stuff that follow you guys for these events, or is this put on strictly for the locals?
We try to utilize every resource we'd like. We want to use local, especially when it comes to like food services, whether that be the brick and mortar restaurants in town, food trucks, or a local caterer. That'd be our first and foremost that we'd go to. The only vendors that or maybe contractors, I guess would be better to say, is that, sometimes like a security company that we utilize in Leadville, we've used at events in Boulder too. But again, as far as like resources go, we always want to use local first.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Well, this is really exciting, and this will begin to put us in the position that we've been talking about the last couple of years, to position Trinidad as a destination source with events like this, and hopefully we can attract other events similar, and also hopefully that this will work out for your organization, where you will be able to return for several years down the road. And just from what I'm hearing, we are all on board in any way that we can help. We are here to see what we can do for you. Michelle, if you want me as mayor to do something when you come to town in a video as a welcoming of some sort from the mayor, I'm more than willing to do that for you. If you want to, just get a hold of me.
Love that.
So you can, if you want to write down this number, I'll give you my cell number. It's 680-0719. And my email, of course, is phil.rico, R-I-C-O, at trinidad.co.gov. So if you need me to do anything, please, feel free to let me know. I can tell right now that being that this is going to be in parallel with the Santa Fe Trail Days, it's going to take some good considered coordination. So it sounds like it's going to be a very busy few days in Trinidad. And I think it's going to create a lot of excitement. One of the things that I'm excited about, though, really, is that we want to try also to build a healthy lifestyle in Trinidad. And I don't know if you have, or if you put on any kind of talks during the day where people can go talk, to listen. Children can go and listen to what the lifestyle of a biker is, things that they can do about your organization, how they can get involved, these type of things. I think if we I really would like to see us try to create a healthier lifestyle for the local residents as well. So that is something I think that you can do. And that would involve, of course, younger people. So, please go ahead and consider that as well.
And Mayor, the tagline of our company is actually the healthy way of life, and everything that we do is centered around that. And we do have a foundation. I know Tim has started the introduction process called the Lifetime Foundation, wherein they go into school districts and revamp their school lunch programs and provide funding to the school. So I believe that process, like the introductions have been made, and that's something that we would love to be able to do for Trinidad as well, is to impact the students.
Good. Well, I just wanted, Michelle and Tim, I want to thank you for your presentation tonight. It's very exciting.
Thank you.
For the entire community and area, for that fact. So looking forward to doing anything we can to help you, and hopefully that we will have, you'll have a good turnout. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, on to item 2, the Foxy Theater update. Dana, or is it you, or is it Stephanie that's going to do a presentation, or both?
Well, we will both be speaking, Mr. Mayor, and we'll be speaking as quickly as possible. We've been wanting to make this presentation for a long time, Mr. Mayor and members of council and any regional Zoomers who may be tuned in. Thank you so much. And of course, this is the theater. And the first slide. We're not on track here. But at any rate, the first slide is a picture of the snack bar. And the message here is, if we feed the theater and the snack bar, it will feed our economy in years to come. And we'll be as brief as possible, and brevity is definitely one of our goals. In 2000, the year 2000, Trinidad was placed on Colorado Preservation Inc.'s list of the Colorado's most endangered places. And last year, 2020, it was removed. And that's to a lot of leadership of the people in this Zoom. And a lot of weight was given to the city's willingness to own the theater property and the 1908 theater. So my first visit to Trinidad was in the 1980s when I came down with Dolores Plested, whose family used to own the Plested department store, where the Hallmark store is now. And our goal was to help save the Baca house, which we did. We had a big campaign and we were able to do that. And then it was a long time until I came back again, 2015, and I quickly saw the great regional potential of the Fox West Theater, and which was owned and controlled by the Sawaya and the Haddad families, who had come many, many generations before from Lebanon. And so I began to, since they owned the theater, I began to build a relationship with the family heirs in Trinidad and in Denver. And I was able personally to secure an option for $10,000, which I just got back today, and assisted in getting financial help from History Colorado that was arranged by Stephanie Bakken, whom you will hear from shortly. And the city closed on the purchase of the Fox West Theater in late 2018. It was a building that was built by the Rapp and Rapp brothers of great international fame. And it has perfect acoustics, probably some of the best acoustics in the United States. And it's a treasure trove of a building with some shortages, like no bathrooms. But we studied a lot of other theaters in communities around, which we're gonna not go through the whole list because we're hurrying, but we can show you some of the theaters. The first one is the Riley Center in Meridian, Mississippi, which is a population of 35,000 people. Next is a theater in Menominee, Wisconsin. I'm probably butchering that, but at any rate, it's a town of 16,000. And the next one is the Fox Theater in Hutchinson, Kansas, which has a population of 40,000. And here's a big town, 153,000, Macon, Georgia. And you can see how grand this theater is. And Little Central City, which has a population of 713 people, has a theater which is supported by the whole state of Colorado and really the visitors here. And then there's the Ringling Theater in Baraboo, Wisconsin, which is a town of 12,000 plus. So you can see that saving theaters is fashionable across the nation. And we have a list of the theater key dates, and we can probably send these to you in written form. But you can see that the Fox Theater closed after 107 years of continuous operation, mostly as a movie theater, but it started out as a legitimate theater and opened in 1908. As I said before, it possesses some of the finest acoustics of any live performance venue in the U.S. and was designed by the amazingly fabulous Rapp brothers who came to Trinidad and met many buildings there. It's roughly the same size as Carnegie Hall in New York, seats 948 people, and it's the only historic theater with 2 balconies in the state. Amazingly enough, historic theaters are known and recognized by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. for being able to generate the impact of at least $2 to $3 per person who buys a ticket, and other dollars coming from the community, because people have a tendency to have dinner. And these theaters create a lot of business and create jobs and improve the local quality of life. And they even like bicycles. And in 2019, the cultural production, this amazed me, in Colorado accounted to $14.5 billion and supported 103 plus jobs. So as we've gone along, we've built a team, and here in my office, we have Stephanie Baca and Blair Miller, Jenna Jorgensen, and down in Trinidad, you have Dr. Chris Smith, and who is a very, very legitimate director and producer of special events. So we also needed to get an architect as soon as possible. And I thought we'd be doing a national search, but we found a great, very well qualified architect in Colorado Springs, Gregory Friesen, and he's a fellow in the AIA, and he is our next speaker. Gregory, take it away.
All right, thank you very much. This will be a brief overview. I think I have about 6 slides. I'll go through them quickly. The first one, where we want to start with, is progress to date. So I think we need to go rapidly right to the next slide, which will be a summary. Oh, go back one, please. There you go. This is a really interesting photograph and a very interesting story. This is Jeff Greenfield with Greenfield Arts in New York City. Jeff is the go-to guy in the country for working on 2 things. Number one is asbestos fire curtains. There's one in the Fox right now. He is expert at encapsulating those curtains so that they can be kept, and they are part of the historic record. The second thing is that he's very well known for is paint analysis. Last fall, I phoned him, said, "Hey, Jeff, I'm working on the Fox West Theater. We'd love for you to come out and take a look at it and tell us what it would take to do a paint analysis." And he said, "You've got to be kidding me. Is this the one in Trinidad?" I said, "Yeah, Trinidad." He said, "I have been wanting to get into that theater for years and years, and every time I'm going through town, it's closed." So I said, "Well, okay, Jeff, we'll open it up for you. When can you come? When can you come?" And he said, "Good timing. I was actually coming to Colorado this weekend." I was speaking to him on a Monday for a ski trip, but I would much rather go to the Fox than go skiing. So he flew in from New York City, got a rental car, picked me up in Colorado Springs, and we drove down. And he was like a kid in Disneyland. What you see right here on the upper left-hand photo, he's got a portable high magnification microscope. And I dug out my Swiss Army knife, opened up a blade. This is the arch. It's called the proscenium arch. It's the opening on the stage. He made a little tiny cut in the plaster about the size of a grain of rice. And his microscope was tied to his phone. So these images you see on the phone is what he's picking up with the microscope. And in the upper right-hand corner, where he's pointing with the pencil, mechanical pencil, is proof that the original color was yellow. It was not this pink and this 1950s pink and turquoise. It was yellow, which ties to historic records of other Rap and Rap theaters in the country. And beyond that, he found evidence of stenciling. So there was an elaborate stenciled pattern around the arch. Super exciting. He cannot wait to come down and finish paint analysis and set us on our path to restoring this theater to original glory. So that's just one of the steps. And a brief overview of one of the experts that have come to look at the Fox and are super excited about it. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we've got a really big team. It's called Contractors. We've got Historic Stage Services. That's Wendy Wassett Barrett. She's working on the Tabor Theater in Leadville right now, and some of you might have read some of the spectacular press about when they gave Wendy access to the attic at the Tabor Theater. They found 750 scene sets. It was just a phenomenal national find. We're very lucky to have her express extreme interest in this project. Evergreen, that's Jeff Green, we just talked about. We've got Acousticians, Theater Consultants Collaborative. They know how to do modern theaters. Jensen Hughes is a national code consultant. We've got a structural engineer who has already done some work to support the stage. Let's see, who else is at the bottom? Oh, then we have mechanical, plumbing, and electrical engineers, and GMS for civil. They are doing a lot of work for the city of Trinidad right now. Great team, highly qualified, top notch. Let's go to the next slide, please. Oh, so here's what we know. This building is in fantastic shape, structurally, the bones. It's really good. It needs a little nip and tuck, facelift, and we're about to start that with repointing the masonry. Keep the exterior solid and in place and intact. And what's key there is we want to make sure that the exterior is perfectly solid before we start putting a lot of investment on the interior. You don't want to have, insects getting in. You don't want to have wind blowing in. You don't want to have leaks. The building is in great structural shape. Surprisingly, a lot of these old theaters, people who have bought them, they've taken axes and knives and they've hacked away at the historic plaster work, which you can see on the left, to modernize it and update it and give it a fresh touch. This is intact. It's just amazing. All the people who have worked on historic theaters look at this and they just say, wow, this is great. They become more and more excited. Bad news, mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems. What's there doesn't work. None of them meet code. That all has to be replaced, but that's good. Because once that's replaced, as Dana mentioned, we can start having events here. It becomes an economic engine. People that come here, they're going to be comfortable. They're going to be safe. Performers are going to be well lit. So that's a good thing. Number of toilets, if you've been through that building, I think there's maybe 4 or 5 that are in there. They don't work. Nobody's going to want to have a drink and something from the concession and sit through a play, and then, we've got to take care of that. ADA access, we'll need to address that, and we have notions on how we can do that based on projects that we've completed previously. And the stage floor, we have done temporary reinforcement of one column that was in pretty bad shape. It was very economical. It was very quick, and we'll need to expand that so that we make sure that the entire stage can carry the load of a lot of the modern equipment, a lot of the speakers and things that come with modern plays. Next slide, please. Okay, this is amazing. What we've discovered is Fox West Theater might have the most intact stage in the country. And why do we say this? You might say, wow, of course you're going to say that. This comes from Wendy Wassett Barrett, the one who's working at the Tabor and elsewhere. Why does she know this? Why does she say this? Well, she has done things like work on the Lensic Performing Arts Theater, the old historic theater in Santa Fe. She worked on the Atlas Theater in Cheyenne, Wyoming. She's working on the Tabor in Leadville right now. A good part of her business this past summer, she was supposed to be restoring theaters across Belgium in Europe. She is so sought after for her expertise that she works across the country and in Europe. So when she saw images, photos of this, of the Fox West, she just could not believe it. This photo on the left of your screen, if you look diagonally on the left corner, you see those light bulbs. Most people see light bulbs and go, yeah, you know, okay, looks like they probably burned out and we need to replace them. Big deal. She looked at those and said, I can't believe that. Some of those are original Edison Mazda hand-blown light fixtures. And we're talking, when we say Edison, we're talking Thomas Edison. So what's fantastic about this is that when it became a movie theater, they put the screen up, which served almost like a time capsule, and everybody forgot everything. They forgot about everything behind that screen, which for us preserved it. And now we are in this rare situation where we can say this is a fabulous stage. This is just almost unparalleled to have a resource like this. And some of these backdrops, she knows exactly who painted some of these backdrops because she has a personal archive, personal record of stage scenery painters that goes back to about 1740. So she knows about this. What you have here is an amazing national resource. Next slide, please. The original rigging. This is the original hemp rope rigging. Most of that is torn out. If you look at the photo on the left, you can see that's all there. You know, most people will go on there, look up and go, yeah, well, there's a bunch of ropes. So what? What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that, you know, this is technology that goes back to the days of the Renaissance. And what we have here are the original ropes. We'll need to replace them. But all the things that they're tied to and the way they work, all of that's intact. The photo on the right, you know, this looks like a Frankenstein movie, right? These giant light switches. These giant switches. When we replace the electrical system, we'll disconnect the power from these, but we'll keep it because this is a time capsule of theater technology from, you know, the early days of the 20th century. This is just amazing. Next slide, please. Oh, ultra-modern design. So you might ask, how could this old building be an example of ultra-modern design? Well, just a short story. In National Theater history, in Chicago, 1903, was a theater called the Iroquois that had one of the most spectacular fires in the country. Until 9/11, more people died in that fire than in any other fire in the national history. If you, in the Trinidad newspaper, and there's a photocopy in the lobby, it tells how the Rapp brothers, who designed this theater, they also had brothers in Chicago, they went to Chicago and they were able to tour that fire before the charred bodies had even been removed. There were over 600, and they were mainly women and children. They were transformed by what they saw. They came back, and on this theater is among the first in the country to incorporate modern life safety and fire protection systems. This theater that you have there in Trinidad has national significance for a number of reasons. It was a pioneer in life safety and fire protection for theaters across the country, even ones today. Next slide. I don't want to belabor that too much. Let's go to the next one. Okay. This gets a little bit kind of nerdy, but in the theater world, everybody knows when they talk about the Rapp and Rapps, they're talking about the two Chicago brothers, Rapp and Rapp. And you see here an image of some of their, one of their theaters that they've done in Chicago. Well, what we have learned from information from the Rapp Family Archive is that one of the Chicago brothers took a trip to Japan. On his way back to Chicago, he stopped in Trinidad and spent time with his Trinidad brothers who were working on this theater. So imagine a family of architects, they're getting together. They're talking about what they're doing. The Trinidad Rap and Raps were enthusiastic and proud to tell their Chicago brothers that they're doing this amazing theater in Trinidad. Chicago brother goes back to Chicago, talks to his other brother there. They're starting to think about theaters. Their first theater was several years after the Trinidad Theater. So what we are able to say is that this famous Rap and Rap theater family, their first theater was in Trinidad. So, you know, the more we learn about this project, the more significant we know that it is. And it's a national treasure. And we're so happy to work on it. I think this is my last slide. Can we go to the next one? Am I talking about this one too, or are you, Dana?
I was going to talk about it if...
Yeah,
Gregory. Thanks for that, Gregory. That's always, I've heard those stories a lot, but they're always so interesting and really just get you excited about that theater. Anyway, I will be brief because I know you have a big agenda, but so we have received almost $650,000 in grant awards over the past several years. In 2020 alone, we received about $400,000 in grant awards. And what we are planning to do with that money is first stabilize the exterior and rehabilitate the exterior. And then we are going to work on the master plan as well. But the exterior stabilization and rehabilitation is phase one. Because of COVID and state agency budget shortfalls, we didn't get quite the money that we had wanted, but we will get started and we'll do the south face and then the east and west portions of the east and west facades. So we're excited to get that work started sometime this spring, we're hoping. Next slide, please. We're really excited about impaneling a new board of directors. We were slowed somewhat in the past, 6 or so months by a board of directors that wasn't active and weren't really engaged in the rehabilitation of the Fox West Theater as we had hoped they would be. So we have installed a new board, and it's Tara Marshall is the president, Gina Cimino is the vice president, Mylan Pride, who is the husband of Rhonda Upper, is the treasurer. I'm the secretary. Kim Lucero from Mount San Rafael Hospital and Martha Fitzgerald have rounded out the board so far, but we will be expanding, and we are hoping, and we are open to suggestions from any of the city council members. If you have ideas of people who might be great to serve on this board, we'd love to hear it. But we are very excited about the new energy and new engagement that this new board has shown, and we are super excited about the progress we think we can make with this new board. So next slide, please. I was just going to I hope that some of you, or that all of you at least had a chance to look at some of the videos that were posted as part of the Fall Fanfare. There were 20 performances, musical performances of all genres. There were 10 history and theater walkthrough videos. Our purpose of the Fall Fanfare wasn't necessarily a fundraising sort of event. We were hoping just to kind of raise awareness about the theater, and I think we did a very good job of that. At one point, we reached 11,223 people during a certain time in November, and
all of the, which this is a good thing, it's all 100% organic reach, which means we weren't paying for any of the content or anything like that. It was just people sending, ooh, look at this, check this out to each other, and just building excitement about it on a sort of more grassroots level, and that was very exciting. So we have currently 1,060 Facebook followers. Next slide, please. So as I said, it wasn't really a fundraising sort of effort. It was really more to raise awareness. But with the combination of the fall fanfare and poster sales, we managed to raise about $14,000. And then subsequent to that, Dana sent out a end of year solicitation, and we raised another couple $1,000s there. So we're slowly building our coffers. Obviously, we need a lot more, but we've made some headway. Next slide, please. What's next? Next slide. So currently we have two grant applications pending. We have a $400,000 grant request submitted to the Environmental Protection Agency to perform the remaining abatement work that has to be done and clean up the bird waste that remains in the theater. We should hear about this grant around June, and if we are successful in getting this grant, we would hope that the work would start in the fall. And then we also recently asked for an additional $25,000 from the Regional Partnerships Program of the El Pomar Foundation to help with the completion of the Master Rehabilitation Plan. Next slide, please. The other thing we wanted to tell you about was, as you know, the Core Zone de Trinidad is a historic district that's on the National Register of Historic Places. However, although the theater contributes to the district, it is not individually listed. We would like to see the theater individually listed, and we have passed the first hurdle, and we will keep working towards that goal. The next step is the State Review Board that on September 17th. So we're excited about passing that first hurdle. Next slide, please. And this is something that is a pretty recent success, that we were one of two projects chosen for this pilot program that is a collaboration between History Colorado, the Department of Local Affairs, and the Colorado Energy Office to demonstrate to communities throughout Colorado, particularly rural communities with Main Street districts, how economic or energy efficiency and historic preservation can work together to revitalize communities. We will be learning more about this program and kind of what we'll be able to accomplish. Our goal for this project is to reactivate the retail storefronts, and that will be the focus. And like I said, we will be learning more about what it entails on Wednesday when we have sort of a kickoff meeting. Next slide. Dina, I think this is you.
Well, as an ongoing basis, of course, we have a great deal of money to raise, and the pandemic didn't do anything at all to help with that. However, starting in May this year, we're going to have a telethon and hope to be able to get a lot of items that we can auction off, and the silent auction will run through the month of May. And we're seeking sponsors and performers and auction items, and would welcome any ideas that you all might have. In addition to that, several years ago, we started Club 190. Some of you, I think, were members. The purpose of it is to shine a spotlight on Trinidad, Colorado, and specifically the Fox West Theater. It spans the 190-mile radius with a special spot at the base of Colorado's 42nd State Park, Fisher's Peak. And the annual membership fee is $190, and $100 of that will go toward the renovation of the Fox West Theater, and the remaining dollars will go toward the bringing of a lot of people to Trinidad to really see the theater and to see the town. And a lot of people in the town have cooperated with discounts to members of Club 190, and the Trinidad Lounge building, which I sold recently to a pair of people that are going to do a great job of getting the lounge open for entertainment, soft opening in April, and around the 1st of May, and a big opening, but it'll be kind of the official home of Club 190, and a lot of other places are participating too. So in addition to the telethon, there'll be a fundraising gala September 25th, and that also, of course, marks the 200th anniversary of the Santa Fe Trail. And this is a joint fundraising effort between our group and the Fishers Peak people, the Trust for Public Land. And so the benefits will be split between Fishers Peak and the Fox West Theater. And the gala will involve entertainment, and it very possibly will end up with a performance of the Colorado Symphony Orchestra, which of course cannot play in the Fox West Theater, but we have the opportunity to play in the Massari Theater at Trinidad College. So all of those things really require a lot of effort. And I talked earlier with Rusty, who's done a lot to help with the theater through the years, with bringing in volunteers and cleaning up the theater, etc. And he said that he suggested that I have some things that I would talk to you directly about. One of them is that I think you all should maybe want to be members of Club 190, and we can have complimentary memberships for Club 190. And I think that would give you an opportunity to meet a lot of very creative people from around in the 190-mile radius. And then another thing that would really help us is if out of some fund we could come up with $25,000 to do a feasibility study for those terribly needed bathrooms, and trying to figure out how to fit them into the theater, et cetera, is going to take some time. But 20,000 of the 25,000 would go to the architect, and 5,000 would come to Urban Neighborhoods Inc. And well, my company hasn't received really any dollars for this project for the last 30 months. So even $5,000 would be great. And that is the end of our presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that we possibly can.
Hey, Ms. Grego, do you have any questions?
I'm in for the Club 190, Dana.
All right, great.
I think that's a great idea. I have no questions. It sounds like a very demanding project, but I think we need to take it one step at a time. But I absolutely believe that this project is essential to Trinidad. I mean, you look at those videos of the massive size of that building. You don't realize it when you pass it every day, but you look at it, those videos, that it's huge. I mean, not all of us, you can't see the forest through the trees, and those of us that lived here a long time kind of took this building for granted, and I think the time has come that we can't do that anymore. And I would be in favor, wherever we could get the money, to do the feasibility study on the bathrooms. I think this is a great project, and I thank you so much. Mr. Friesen, I saw your documentary on Facebook when you did the interior of the theater, and I thought you put the personal touch to it, and it was fantastic. I loved every minute of it. Thank you. I have no questions. I just want to show that I am very encouraged and supportive of the project.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Mr. Goodall?
Not so much any questions, just a statement. I think the theater is definitely a feather in Trinidad's cap, and I think it's another piece to the puzzle of where this town is going to. I know we have a lot of projects and stuff going on, and I'm hoping at some point we can find some money to help out with this project wherever or whenever we can.
Ms. Ogletree?
thank you all for the presentation. I feel very much more educated about the building. And so I again, as a relative newcomer to Trinidad, I am somehow a bit speechless at the embarrassment of riches that we have in this community. And it's just wonderful to hear all that. I'm in for the Club 192, happy to do that. That sounds like a great idea. And I would love us to be able to help in whatever way we can with the feasibility study. I think too, just a word of encouragement. I know that one thing the pandemic has done, at least in my life, and I know in a lot of people's lives, is that it has increased the amount of value that I get that I give to live performances. When I now am able to hear someone do anything in real life, I'm just so excited. And I think there will be a lot of pent-up demand for whatever it is that we can put on there. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Williamson.
Hi, I've always been interested in the theater there, and I like Councilwoman Ogletree have just been really appreciative of this presentation. It was really neat to see the history there, and just excited about everything going forward, and glad that this is happening, and glad to be a part of it going forward. So thank you.
Mr. DeBono?
Yes, I concur with Councilman Ogletree with the fantastic presentation. The Club 192, very in favor of it. I just have a quick story. I was 5-6 years old when I first went to the Fox Theater back in the early 60s, and I went with my cousin for the first time. And I looked up off to the right side, and I saw a couple of seats with curtains behind it off to the side. And I asked my cousin, I said, "Why doesn't anybody sit there?" And he said, "I think that's where President Lincoln was assassinated." I still remember that.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. DeBono?
No, nothing else.
That was a good story. Mr. Shu.
No, I don't have any questions. I think it's a good project. I hope it works out real well.
Dana, this Phil, this has been quite a work in progress. You and I have been talking about this since I became mayor and you came to Trinidad and started talking about it. It's a wonderful project, and what's amazing to me is it seems like every time I listen to a presentation, I get additional information of what is in that building. It's remarkable. Listening to what Gregory had to say was pretty amazing to me. I know that it's going to take some time to get this all put together. I know the community is behind doing something with this, and they believe that the Fox West Theater is a treasure that we all have, and that we would like to get it at least restored to what it can be. So I'm just saying, thank you, Gregory and Stephanie, for your presentation tonight, and we'll continue to work with you to see what maybe it'll probably go on long after my tenure in time as mayor, but we have a start. And thank you for taking the ball and running with it, and looking forward to doing some more things for the Fox West Theater with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go on to item 3, review of proposed mural ordinance. That would be Mr. Downs.
Thank you, Mayor, Council members. Good evening.
The long-awaited mural ordinance.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I want to begin by saying I'm sorry for how long this has taken. The fault is entirely mine. I was told last week that the city's being criticized for how long it's taken to get this proposed mural ordinance in front of you. And again, the fault is entirely mine. I have no justification other than to throw myself on the mercy of the court, in this case of council. But I sent all of you an email this morning, and I have a number of changes to the kind of tenor of the ordinance and what I would like to just bring to your attention to begin the discussion this evening. And that is, and this comes from staff conversations and input and things about that. So if I could just touch on what those changes are. The first one is, and I think probably the most important, is that any reference to murals in residential areas would be eliminated. That is, there was language to eliminate murals from residential areas. And I think it's probably best to just wipe out or eliminate any discussion of murals in residential districts, zoning districts, in this proposed ordinance. We can talk about that another time. I mean, if you guys follow my recommendations, I don't mean to sound like it's a done deal, but that is that is one change. Another important change is the application fee proposed would be lowered. I had a fairly high application fee amount. I was trying to tether that to what I thought the effort would be for city staff, city boards, all the people who would be involved. But it does seem like an $850 fee may have somewhat of a chilling effect on people applying for murals. So I in the draft ordinance, lowered that and put it down to $250, but whatever you think is appropriate in that respect as well. Applications, of course, would be picked up in City Hall. It would be contemplated that they would be filed and processed by the city planner's office rather than the city clerk's. I had city clerk, and it would be done by the city planner's office. And I think, and also, and one last suggestion, and that is, I had in here that murals would not go on the backs of buildings, and someone had suggested that to me at one point. However, as Mike and Wally pointed out to me in a conversation we had last week, there are a lot of buildings that have common walls, so they have no outside exterior walls. That is, they may have a business right next to them, and so the only available real space they would have would be the back of the building if you hold true to the notion that murals should not be ever on the fronts of buildings. So you may want to allow for murals on the backs of buildings. But with those comments having been made, I want to say one last thing, I guess, and that is mural ordinances or policies are supposed to do basically four things: an application process, criteria for a mural location on a building, and content prohibitions, boards, commissions, and staff that are involved for a mural application, and considerations for mural design standards. So I hope that the proposed ordinance does those things, and that was my objective. But that's all I have at this point.
Okay. Now let's go ahead and get some comments or questions from council, starting with Ms. Grego.
Mr. Down, so explain that. So if you're taking out the residential aspect of the ordinance, does that mean ordinances will be allowed in residential areas?
Well, yes, I mean, it does. And I am not a proponent of allowing, I mean, that's just me personally, right? I personally am not a proponent of having murals in residential areas. Now, it was suggested that completely eliminating murals in residential zoning districts would be a chilling effect, or would be a violation of First Amendment rights. And as I have thought about that since, I don't think that's true. As an example, remember when the city, and this may be a bad example, but the city eliminated flashing signs right after what they did at Cook Motors. I mean, we were in the process.
Right.
That sign was allowed because that came in. Well, after that, we eliminated those kinds of signs. I think what you cannot do as a governmental entity, is eliminate or try to restrict content beyond like what we can regulate, right? So, hate speech and things like that. But I think it would be legal to actually ban murals in residential zoning districts. I'm just not sure you want to have that conversation now. And I would like to say one thing, and that is Salida in their ordinance, section 161050, has that each dwelling unit on a lot with a non-residential use in a residential zone. So that's different, but I think this would still apply in a residential zone. May display up to the total sum of 9 square feet of signs. The display of signs in residential zones is limited to pole or ground signs that do not exceed 5 feet in height. Anyway, I think we could limit the size. There are a number of things that could be done, because it does seem like there may be a very vocal segment of society that does not want you to forbid murals or something like that in residential zone districts. I'm sorry for that long-winded answer.
No. I got to try and figure this out. And the reason I ask is because knowing that the ordinance as it sits now, you cannot advertise, right?
Right.
So what I'm concerned about is the Airbnbs and the VRBOs, how they can use murals to make their property stand out over and above anything else in the neighborhood, a quasi sign, so to speak. And then I did some research on signage in as compared to the value of the real estate and in the residential area, the houses surrounding the real estate that has the signage on it, but there isn't. Some are, it's a 50-50 thing. So I'm kind of up in the air on the residential thing. But
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but what really concerns me is, for number one, I think the median between 850 and 250 should be somewhere around 500, because you're talking about there's a lot of input that the city staff has to do. And my main concern is the city and different boards and commissions and private citizens have done projects in the area that it's fine and good when the project is done, the flags are put up or the signs are put up or the pianos are put up, but nobody maintains them. So what I would like to suggest, and see if council agrees, is if I don't know what the life of a mural is, I guess it's dependent on what materials are used, but what I would like to do is maybe have a renewal of the permit, so city staff can act, so we can look at it and see if it's still in good repair, if it's still an asset instead of a detriment, something like that, because that concerns me, because as a community we've been prone to be doing that in the past. We put things up with all good intentions and then it goes the wayside. So and I have one other concern, is the historical designation of Corazon. Is that will the murals affect that at all, Les?
Well, we already have, you may recall, you adopted the ordinance that said no murals on contributing buildings in the historic preservation zoning district.
Right.
Right. And so there can be murals otherwise on non-contributing buildings, and maybe I'm not understanding your question, ma'am. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What I mean is, okay, the Corazon is a district. So
Right.
even if it's not painted on a historic building, will that cause a problem with the designation of the Corazon? That's what
No,
no,
but part of the overall consideration of a mural application is the aesthetic, and whether or not, like if it's if it's painted in day glow colors. And I have wanted to certainly avoid a conversation of art, what is pleasing to the eye, what one person likes, what one doesn't.
Right.
But so the overall aesthetic is a consideration, and that would be certainly in terms of how it looks, how the proposed mural looks, in the Corazon. So if you had like a proposed mural that was going right in a really historic area of downtown, you would not want it to really deviate or depart from that historic nature. I mean, I know it's hard for me to articulate that, but you would want it to be mindful of its surroundings and not really detract from what you're looking at. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. I have no further questions.
Okay.
Mr. Goodall.
I also think that the fee at 250 is too low. If 8 or whatever's too, I think 500 is a happy median. I think it keeps, it makes sure that all of our costs are covered, and because the last thing we want is for it to be a strain on a budget on any department. So, and I'm also a toss up on residential murals. I just don't know what to think about property values or anything else. If that's stuff we can take into consideration in neighborhoods, what the effect of those would be, stuff along those lines, Les.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Ogletree.
Overall, I think it's good. It's a lot more streamlined than what we were looking at before, and I think anything that's streamlined is easier for people to deal with. I'll start with the cost. I'd like staff to take a look at that and give us their estimate of what it would cost. $500, that's great. If it's less, I think we should set it artificially. I think it should be based on really and truly what it costs them to do this at their best guess of that. On the backs of the building, I think fine with that. I think that's the least attractive part of a building. So if something that could be put there would in some way, then that's great. On the residential thing, I think it's wise to keep it out of this stage of mural review and approval. I think something we may work out in the future, but I did want to, if we put this kind of a mural ordinance into place, or to lift the citywide moratorium, is because that's what I only have now.
Right. We will lift this. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Moratorium on murals.
This would go in, and the moratorium would be lifted. I'm sorry, ma'am, you're breaking up.
Let's see. Just some. All right. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes,
okay.
There.
All right. I'll sit closer. This computer's not the loudest thing either. I think it would be helpful too if we had a list of which buildings are the contributing ones that were easy for people to understand, so that we could have a reference in the ordinance itself under prohibitions, under the third one down here on the draft that I have, that murals shall not be applied to any contributing buildings in the Corazon de Trinidad Historic Preservation District as defined by, and link it to something just so they know. I was wondering why it is that we're specifying that the mural can't be directly applied to masonry, stone, or brick building materials. Why is that? What's the thinking there?
That is because, as Ms. Clark was reminding me again this morning, that if a mural is going to be taken off, like they decide they don't want it anymore, the only way to get paint off of the side of a building really is to sandblast it. And I think that notion, like, it may not matter if it's a newer building, but if it's an older building in any way, kind of a historic building, sandblasting kind of is pretty harmful for the masonry. And that was, but that's why. I mean, that may not be a great rationale for not wanting that done. But that is primarily on the contributing buildings in the historic preservation zoning district. I think in other, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Put murals on there, anyways, though.
Right.
We can't put murals on those.
Correct. But they could be painted on, I believe, non-contributing buildings, right?
What I'm saying is, I'm reading this as prohibiting that any building.
Okay.
It's saying that murals shall not be applied directly to masonry, stone, or brick buildings.
Right. Right.
So maybe if there is some structural reason why that's not a good idea because of sandblasting, maybe the building department would be that would be the department who would make that judgment call. Because I think most of the time when people think murals, they think of paint on masonry. They think of paint on concrete. They're not really thinking paint on wood that's affixed to those things. So I just wondered if that was a big thing with the staff, that they didn't want that, or what the story was.
Well, and I know Georgie is on, and in a moment I'll ask her to speak to that. I have a few points, but go ahead, Councilwoman.
Okay, and then under applications, I'm wondering maybe it would be helpful when we talk about the materials to be used. Could we think of having a palette of colors like the state has given us for the
federal ochre
or something like that? I'm serious, to have a range of colors that would fit the historic area. No neon green, no, that would, that we're not excited about seeing. It might not be a bad idea to give people an idea of the palette that they can work from, and not just these three colors, but this scale.
Right.
And then I thought, and going to what Councilwoman Griego had said about maintenance, we have nothing in here that I saw that requires the applicant to tell us what they're going to do about maintenance on any ongoing basis.
You're right.
Something in there, and that's all I had.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Williamson.
I have no questions at this point, Mayor.
Okay, Mr. DeBono.
Yes, I believe the $400 to $500 is a suitable amount for the application fee. Les, in this ordinance, is there any restrictions on technology? Can a business, for example, export a mural as an image for inclusion in a document, so to speak? So, because there's a lot of young business owners that use technology as a digital workspace for their visual collaboration. So it's digital technology, they can change the mural anytime they want.
Well, I think, if I understand your question correctly, Councilman DeBono, a lot of that is non-murals. Like we've talked about, like projecting images or, things like that. That would not be a mural. That would be something, that would be a different kettle of fish.
Okay, some cities that they define that as a mural. With the
well, I understand. When you said exporting an image for purposes like of an application, I think an image could be exported, to be looked at as to what is going to be applied. But I think it matters how it's going to be applied. So if it's put on in some kind of semi-permanent fashion, then you're getting into the world of either a mural or a sign, depending on what it's seeking to do. But if it's another medium, like, you know, something that is casting an image temporarily,
Right.
then I think that would not be a mural.
Okay.
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 I hope that's responsive to your question.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Sure.
Mr. Shu?
I don't really have any questions, but it would be nice in that application if we had something written in there about the upkeep and the maintenance, like I said, with everybody talking about that if after a period of time, we may be able to review that. Might look into some kind of language for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we need to, along with staff, to review that cost to see where it actually fits. If staff feels 250 is adequate, or if they feel like by the time everyone has to review the project, that has to be higher. So I think that needs to be reviewed to a reasonable amount to what they feel is adequate for reimbursement of what we're looking for. As far as residential, I'm not in favor of residential murals. I just it could become a mess, and it will offend neighbors. I think that would be a problem. The backs of the buildings, I think I'm fine with that, because, like you said, some buildings only have the backside, and actually a mural would probably dress it up. I like the thought of finding out. I think Ms. Ogletree mentioned that she would like to have a list of the contributing buildings downtown, what they are, so that we would know. And of course,
right.
And anybody who wants to do one, if they are in a contributing building or not. As far as the colors go, I think that's pretty hard to do. Because a mural will take a variety of colors. The only thing I don't want to see is, like I said, just bright neon colors. I think that would be offensive, and it wouldn't fit within the historic palette of Trinidad. So I think as long as there are some decent colors, because just like a painting, it takes many, many colors to come up with the painting. The application over masonry buildings, that is something I thought about, and I think that what has to happen is there needs to be actually a memorandum of understanding between the owner and the artist as to how he's going to apply that, and whether they'll accept direct paint over their facility or their building or not. And if they have to use plywood or something else, it should be the product that is specified, and probably a specific thickness, so that it will not warp. There's a particular product that's called medium density overlay. It's good two sides. That's made for particular purposes such as that. So that would be something that I think that would have to be, make sure that if they're going to use some kind of a fabric or plywood or whatever, I think it needs to be specified so that it will withstand the weather, because plywood over a time will deteriorate. That's the one thing I was wondering, like I said, I wanted to mention is that when we started talking about murals, it came to light that who owns the actual mural? Is that the artist, or is that going to be the building owner? Who owns that? And who's going to be responsible, like everybody's saying, for the upkeep? Because there has been litigation, from my understanding, in the past where artists went in and painted something, did a mural. Somebody came in and tried to change it somehow. The artist got upset, and there was some litigation over it because he felt like he owned the final product. So I think that needs to be a good understanding between the building owner and the artist, whoever that would be. I think we're on the right path. I think we just need to iron it out. It sounds like council has given their thoughts as to what they would like to see done. The big thing I think is the question of residential murals. I think that's the one question that I think people still have. Like I said, I'm not in favor, but I'm not sure how many others are not.
And Mayor and council members, if I could please, I'm sure that Wally and Georgie are probably wanting to talk about some things. And if I could please, I'd ask them, and I'm sure that Mike has things he would like to add as well. But Wally, could you please tell us like what your thoughts are like on the color palette or things of that nature? If you have any thoughts or anything you want to add.
As far as color palette, no, I agree with the mayor that just like neon colors, colors that could be distractions to drivers, or obstructive in some way. As for the residential thing, I think what the point is that this permit is really to put down regulations and a permitting process for the historic district. And that if we are going to do something similar with the residential, there still has to be like a way that people can apply and either be turned down for a specific reason or be given the opportunity to find a way to make what they want to do work. I just think like a blanket banning of them, we might face some issues with freedom of speech, stuff like that. And I just don't think that, and I thought, as far as I was aware, the purpose of this mural ordinance was to put down a plan to protect our historic assets. And so I thought that should be like the focus of this one, and the residential should be something separate in itself. But no, for the most part, I agree with most of the points. I do think that the cost should be based upon what it will actually cost the city in time that they are putting towards this, and plus maybe the cost of covering up the mural if somebody does not meet the maintenance standards of what is required. But I don't think that the cost in itself should be prohibitory, because I don't think that we should be discouraging people from doing murals. I think we should be making sure we're protecting important buildings. So those are my thoughts on it.
Hey, Les,
Yes.
Wally brings up a good point about that, and I think what we need to maybe do is just back away from the residential at this point and maybe just call this mural ordinance, the mural ordinance for the historic district of the Corazon Square or the Corazon of Trinidad, or however, it's something to that effect. I think that would be good. That way it defines what we're actually talking about and where.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I have a question?
Sure.
Can we continue the moratorium on residential areas?
There you go.
Yes. I mean, if we can continue it for commercial and for the Corazon to Trinidad, we could continue it for residential areas. However, anyone who's listening in is probably thinking, oh God, they're going to do that, and then it's going to take forever, and Downs is going to be, I mean, we can do it. Yes. I just think we should probably have a work session soon on what you think about murals in residential zoning districts. Oh, I thought murals were going to be done. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Did I say that out loud?
No.
Yeah, right. Councilwoman Ogletree.
I think that would be a good idea. I think that Mr. Goodall, if you have a question, you have to raise your hand.
I was going to ask the same thing as Karen. If we pass this ordinance for murals in the business district, whatever the case, can we keep a moratorium on residential until we do figure it out? That I was going to ask the same question.
Okay.
Yes.
Ms. Ogletree, did you have something else to add?
I wanted to ask the question of Les. Would it not be just say this is for any commercially zoned land? I mean, are we just saying this is the mural policy for the core zone to Trinidad? It seems like to me we have businesses outside of that who might also might want to do mural. So why can't it just be citywide for business property?
You're right, and I agree with that. I mean, for whatever it's worth, I agree with that completely. Because, and that's kind of a problem, because I've been talking to staff, especially Georgie, about that. Like, I get it for the core zone to Trinidad, but you want this policy for all of the business district. And, you know, the core zone makes up the majority of the business district, but certainly not all of it. And you're right. I think that's a very good point. Also, just to kind of muddy the waters, and that is, Mike had a very good point during these conversations, but there are residential properties in business zoning districts and vice versa. So you have residential murals on, you know, houses that are still in the business district. Anyway, you know, there's one on Animus or others around. I'm sure you can. But anyway, so I'm sorry, that contributed nothing to the conversation. And you're all looking at me like, anyway.
I mean, this is going to apply to all the businesses in the industrial area and out in the industrial park and everything, correct?
Well, I think it should. Yes, I think it should. I don't think, you know, you want a bunch of unregulated, but yes, I mean, if this is the policy for the business area, that's absolutely right. Clearly not the core zone, and yes, it should. That's absolutely right.
Yeah, I think there's some good thought process there. Georgie, did you have some comments?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just had a couple things I wanted to say. First, about the core zone district. Councilwoman Grego had asked about if Murals would threaten that designation, and it would not threaten the designation, because the National Register does not protect any historic structures. It's only a honorary designation. And the other comment I had was for Ms. Ogletree. My understanding is that once brick or masonry is painted, especially brick, if you were to try to sandblast it to remove that, and keeping in mind that the owner of buildings changes hands. So if you have a mural on a building and then the next owner wants to take it off, they sandblast it. The Miners Memorial Museum, the front of it, you can see the brick was sandblasted, and it removes that hard surface. And once that surface is removed, water penetrates the brick and damages the brick. So there is definitely damage done when paint is applied to the masonry or the brick, and then they try and remove it. Another comment was mentioned, if it wasn't maintained and we wanted to paint over it, then we just have a box of color over what had been a mural. I don't quite understand that, what we would do if someone wasn't maintaining it. Would we hire another artist to do something appropriate or to repair it? Those are just things you would need to consider.
And Georgie, you have a list of contributing buildings in the core zone. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Just
any other thoughts from council? And go ahead, Mr. Goodall.
Maybe then what we need to consider is in the application process that somewhere in that a portion of that money that's charged should go into a fund to maintain, or in case we have to deal with something that's not maintained or was not put up to standards, and the business owner's like, well, you know, sorry, that's going to come out of our pocket to fix these issues, and we need to definitely take that into consideration. And in the fee process could be an area we could deal with that to create the fund to maintain or to fix problem areas. Just a thought.
Okay. Mr. Valentine, do you have any comments?
No, thank you, Mayor, members of council. I really don't. It's been a lot of things have been brought up. I know that art is always a passionate item, and once this gets to a public hearing, I'm sure we'll hear from the citizenry that are passionate about it. I would just say for those that are on the call, if you have comments, get them to City Hall, and we'll try to address them before we get to that first reading of this ordinance and then the second reading in the hearing. So that's all I have, Mayor.
And I don't know if this would be appropriate, Les, or not. Would it be appropriate to maybe put something in the newspaper that we are, before it even comes to that, saying that we are, council is considering a mural ordinance, and if there are any questions that they send him in, to say we put it all together. What's your thoughts?
Now, Mayor, okay, so yeah, forgive me, okay, just some of you are gonna, be mad at me for one reason, and some are gonna be mad at for another. But you'll recall back at the beginning of last year, we had a lot of conversation on murals. However, I am mindful that it has taken a long time, and that that is my fault. So you may want, because it has taken me so long, you may want people to be able to come in and say, you might have forgotten what I said last year because it took so long, but I don't know, because you have given people a really full opportunity to speak on murals. And I would just say that part of me, and I would defer to Mike and of course your wishes. I would just say, I think that ship has sailed.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I think it's a very good question, but I just think everybody had an opportunity.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions from council or Wally? Of course, he left. Ms. Clark? Mike? Well, any other thoughts for upcoming work session from council? Ms. Grego?
I still think we need to start talking about Airbnbs and VRBOs and short-term rentals. If you look online, it's continuing, it's huge, and I think it's cutting into our inventory of usable residential long-term rentals.
And I would love to address that, even though it's outside of my wheelhouse, but maybe we should have that. So you want that on a work session agenda, is that right? Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
I agree, because I think we should at least be looking at those, and I've always felt and investigated this some, that if nothing else, require them to pay lodging tax, because the companies that they list these to will collect that tax for them and send that to us. It's not like we're putting a major burden on them, and it's a good source of lodging tax income for this city. I agree with you, Karen. We need to talk about Airbnbs.
I think that's already being done, Mr. Goodall. I think the tax is being sent back to the city.
You're I think absolutely correct, Mayor. But I think it's a conversation that you guys want to have, right? And so I think that we can answer many of those questions, and we love to do that now. But I think you want to fully discuss that.
If we are collecting lodging tax, that means that they have a business license and they're required to have a license and everything. How do we know who's even paying?
So how about if we talk about that? I don't mean to I don't mean to be evasive. Thank you.
I agree. I didn't want to have that conversation now, but yeah, it definitely going to warrant a work session for some discussion.
everybody's so effervescent from murals. That chat. Yeah, right.
Ms. Ogletree, do you have anything that you'd like to see discussed?
I agree that we could have that discussion. I think that's a good idea, and get some input from staff about what kind of lodging tax income we have, and their awareness of how prevalent that is in our community. I think I'd like to continue following through on housing issues, and if there's any more information that we can get out to the community and or be churning along so that something keeps happening with that. I think that'd be a good thing to keep talking about. That's all I have for tonight.
The housing part of it, I know that the last discussion we had mentioned, Mr. Valentine, that was not the only discussion, that there would be other questions or sessions.
So that's all I have tonight. Thanks.
Mr. Williamson. Mr. Williamson.
Mr. Williamson. I'm sorry, I just wanted to add that, Mayor.
No,
sorry.
Sorry.
Any future items you'd like to discuss?
I think he said no, Mayor.
Okay. Mr. DeBono?
No, just, Mr. Mayor, just more consideration, maybe a little bit more about housing, and
okay,
it's pretty important.
Mr. Shu, other than bigger fish in Monument Lake?
That's all I'm concerned about.
The only thing I wanted to mention tonight is we're still trying to plow through this process of the 5-star program. The county went ahead and okayed a budget. It was today. They've had like 3 or 4 different iterations of budgets. Evidently, they settled on one. But I just wanted to mention to you that there was a little concern from my end on it. But we are going to have another meeting with the 5-star committee tomorrow and bring up that discussion, and then I'll report deeper on it next Tuesday night at our regular session. So just to let you know that that is moving through the process right now, and we'll see how it goes. So if no one else has anything to add, unless Mr. Valentine, do you have anything that you would like to bring up in future sessions?
No, Mayor. I think we've got a full plate of items, so that's all I have.
Okay. We don't want to have anybody read a Dr. Zeus thing, do we? Good night, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.